Well, then you got out of O'Callahan and you went back to Washington? Or where did you go? You came here to Maxwell Air Force Base.
Yes, here, and then from here, I had a chance to go on a staff somewhere, probably back to sea on a seagoing staff, or come to, actually they wanted me to come to Pascagoula and be the a CO of one of 3 teams that are being organized under a Navy captain. And what we did was follow the completion, dockside testing, sea testing of the Spruance class ships. We came here a year before the first ship was delivered to Pascagoula, and we had to write all the documentation for the whole ship, the handbooks on how to operate the ship and the whole thing. And I was one of the 3 COs reporting to the force striper, and all of us had to have been skippers of us. And we had 40-man teams, so 3 40-man teams. This was in lieu of bringing the whole team down, the whole ship's crew, and putting them in hotels and everything. We were permanently assigned here. So what we did, we wrote all the documentation, we followed all the dockside tests, went all the sea trials, and at one day, the whole crew would be flown to the ship and go directly aboard the ship. Meantime, they had been trained at all different schools, and they started at different times, depending on the length of the school, so that they all finished and were ready to come and get on the ship. And when they got here, they found their name on their bunk, on their locker.
Wow. The
bunk's made up.
Wow.
And my guys on my 40-man team, well, I was selected for captain and moved up and relieved the guy that was the CO of that unit. I became the CO of the Fleet Induction Team Spruance class destroyers. And I relieved the guy that was there, and he thought he was going off to make admiral, and he didn't make it. But that was quite an interesting assignment.
But your 40-man team never really took the ship.
When the ship would leave here, they would go with the commissioning crew to their home port. Half of them went to the Atlantic and half of the ships went to the Pacific. But during the trip, they were actually on station with the other.
So those 40 people could train everybody well.
We had checked them out as far as we could. Had dockside on the dockside, but they'd go with them all the way to the home port. And when the new CO, the PCO, felt comfortable, he'd release them and they'd come back to Pascagoula.
And start a new ship.
We did the first 19 ships before I left there.
Wow. What was interesting about the Spruance class, I thought those were awesome ships, but they didn't stay in service that long.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
They took that hull and put it on the Aegis cruiser. Mm-hmm. And the technology that went to the Aegis cruiser just outclassed the Spruance, and they said they only kept them like 15 or 20 years tops.
You know how they air condition, how they control the air conditioning on those ships? They introduced heat to the system to control it. They went wide open all the time, the air conditioning system, all the spaces supposed to be air conditioned, the living spaces, the CIC and the gun control and all the other. But outside that, they used heat to control the temperature in the ship. Now that's really energy efficient, isn't it?
Well, you had plenty of heat to use. I mean, nice if you can use the heat. We had
donkey boilers on there to heat the water for showers and cooking and stuff like that. It had a little donkey boiler, and I guess it would produce enough heat to control it. I couldn't believe that when I found that out.
It was kind of like the thermostat.
Yeah, that's what it was. But those were performance ships. They were gas turbine powered, full reversible pitch propellers. You could stop the ship from flank speed at 1.5 length of the ship.
Good grief.
With the power that they had and the change the blades on they never had to stop The propellers, they were running full blast. They just changed the blades. Went from reverse forward to reverse.
Yeah, that makes it so much easier.
Oh yeah.
They did that with the next class, and the Aegis cruiser did the same thing.
Yeah.
I got to ride one of those, but I found it interesting that they used the same hull.
Yeah.
But it was a good hull.
That was amazing when I found out that we could do that. We called it a crash back. That was a term we used. We're going to do a crash back. And you didn't dare leave anything like cups and sitting anywhere.
Right.
And on your desk in your stateroom, you better put everything in a drawer.
Cause
Everything would come loose. And he broke things loose that were welded down.
Not something you wanted to do lightly.
Well, we did it on the O'Callahan when I was on that Tiger cruise with a guy named Dallas Bethay. Interesting character, retired captain. But he did a crash back for us just to show us how it worked, you know. Steaming along and then throw it into a crash back, and the water washed over the fantail.
Oh yeah.
It was just that powerful.
Those ships had pretty good pickup. They had what do you call it? Type of boilers they had were new on those ships.
Well, they were using gas-powered.
What do they call those boilers?
Well, they had boilers,
When you'd add power, it sounded like gas turbine ships.
but it was gas turbines, wasn't it?
No, they were steam ships.
The Spruance was.
Oh, Spruance gas turbine. Yeah, I'm talking about O'Callahan.
O'Callahan was definitely steam. Yeah, it was a high. What was it called? It was
Some kind of powered boilers they called them on a.
it's 1200 psi.
Yeah.
Some kind of boiler. Yeah, it was high pressure.
Pressure fired boilers.
Pressure fired, high pressure fired.
Yeah, pressure fired boilers.
Yeah.
But they sounded like gas turbines when you'd back away from
It
the
did.
gear.
Yeah, it was really wide. But
Well, you didn't ask me about a world altitude record I set in an airplane, did you?
I meant to. Let me ask you about a world altitude record that you set.
What's that?
Tell me about your world altitude record.
Well, my aviatrix wife, Joan, was working with the Ray J Corporation, who incidentally had put superchargers in the plane she flew around the world in, because she had big gas tanks throughout the whole cabin, and you needed all the power you could get to get off of the ground, and you couldn't gain much altitude till you used some of that weight. But anyway, after her demise, or but before that, she was working at the Ray J Corporation and flying altitude flights. When you take a Bonanza, say, and it never had they didn't have a kit to make a supercharged engine out of that Bonanza. Well, that's what Ray J did. They developed a modification to supercharge any naturally aspirated engine. And she was working with him, and they were going to set a world's record just for the company. I mean, of course, she'd get some notoriety out of it too. So they were working with, they had to put one in a Cessna 182. That was a fixed gear plane, but a pretty husky engine for general aviation. And they had put a supercharger engine in that, and so she and her writer was writing a story about it, Shannon Schubert. Were out flying, talking about the opportunities they had for the book and everything. And that's when the wing came off and destroyed it. But anyhow, Ray J said, look, why don't you just continue with that flight altitude that she was trying? Would you like to do that? And I said, sure. Because I'd been doing some flight time on weekends with them, doing the same thing, taking different model planes up, and you run at different altitudes and take all the different readings and everything. I said, sure, let's do it. And so we went to the FAI, which is the International Record Setting. It's located in Paris, Fédération Aéronautique Internationale in Paris. you want to set a world's altitude record, they have to first give you a time frame to try it. And they'll give you 90 days. And so we got a 90-day authorization to try set a world's altitude record in a certain class of aircraft. And the airplane that we decided to do it in was Cessna 210. It was a retractable 6-passenger 222, and the radio had supercharged this engine. And I took that plane, actually we were at the end of our 90-day period, and we had to do something, but we were losing some manifold pressure. And I had flown the airplane higher than we were able to get it at the day we made the record flight. But anyhow, we had to do it because the time given was ended that day or next day. So I took it off out of Long Beach and went out over the little island off of and kept going up there. And I had something like 40,600 indicated altitude. And what slows you down, or what limits you, you get so slow and you're sort of hanging on the prop, and then your engine is not getting air and it starts overheating. And when your engine starts overheating, the oil gets thinner and thinner, and you lose oil pressure. And if you don't be careful, you'll seize up your engine. Well, anyway, I went out as high as I could go, and I kept trying to go a little higher and a little higher, and he was just sort of hanging there. And in the meantime, I'm talking on the radio to the ground, and finally I decided, you know, I can't go any higher. So I started down, and believe it or not, coming down from 40,000 feet indicated, it took almost 40 minutes to, can't go too fast till you lose the wings off your airplane.
Yeah.
But they had a little newspaper had a jet. They went out and found me, and they were circling around me as I was coming down, interviewing me for the evening news about the flight, and who was in honor of Joan Merriam. And when they reduced that flight, when they reduced the flight, they go back to density altitude and the density altitude is based on temperature and pressure. And you can reduce any indicated altitude, so the indicated altitude, the pressure, the density altitude, that's what the record set on, was 32,000 and some odd feet. And I set a record that had been held 6 months by a Japanese airplane and pilot. And no, he had held it for a year or two, and I held it for 6 months, and then somebody broke my record. But you've got to break the record more than a certain percent of the previous record. You just can't break it by 10 feet or something like that.
Can't just float through it.
So, yeah, and did I send you the picture of me with standing by the airplane with my gas mask and helmet on?
I don't think I've seen that picture. I'll have to get a picture of it before we go.
I'll mail it. I'll email it to you.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to have that.
Let me go get the certificate.
Okay, yeah.